Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G. You know, I've really been enjoying season 10 and having these wonderful conversations that cause me to think differently about things, asking probing questions, and getting a chance just to step back and think in a new way about my world, what's happening in the world, and benefiting from the brain power and the insight of my guest. And so listen, you get to continue to benefit from this through these scintillating conversations. And today it will be nothing different. It'll keep in line with the exciting conversation that we've been having. But let me first say this. I often talk about my life, like where I am now and things that I do, but I don't always pause to sort of talk about my childhood and my likes. As early as I can remember, I have loved the whole idea of studying the planets, the solar system. I can remember being able to name the planets in order by the time I was 6. I mean, some of my friends were still trying to learn how to read. I could spell the planets. I could draw the planets. I can remember this white telescope that my mom got me for Christmas of 1970. I can remember talking about Apollo 13. That stuff just always intrigued me. So when I met my guest, and I'll introduce him in just a moment, and I found out that he was a black astronomer, I thought, oh, we need to talk. I got questions. I want to geek out on stuff. There are probably intelligent things I want to ask, but then they're just a bunch of ignorant things or funny things that I want to ask about space. And so since that time, we've gotten to know each other, work on some things together. He's become a friend. His name is Eric Wilcots. He's currently the Dean of Letters and Science at UW-Madison, the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I will say that he's the dean of the school that I graduated from. I was an LNS major in 1985. Eric M. Wilcots is the Dean of College of Letters and Science, but he's also the Mary C. Jacoby Professor of Astronomy in the Department of Astronomy, his home department since 1995, because when you're an academic dean, you still have an academic home. So you're not just merely administrator, you still keep your tenure and all of that good stuff. Prior to assuming the role as dean, he served as deputy dean of the college, an associate dean for research, as well as an associate dean for natural sciences. A little bit about his background. As dean of LNS, Dr. Wilcots is committed to creating an environment where all can succeed and thrive. In 2020, he launched the Dean's Initiative for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and created the STEM Scholars Program, which provides critical support for LNS or Letters and Science students entering the university with an interest in science, technology, engineering, and math. That's where STEM comes from, science, technology, engineering, and math. And he also hired the first ever Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the college and is launching new engagement efforts for Letters and Science alumni of color. He has an array of things that he's done across the campus, projects and facilities that he's overseen. But in addition to his academic and research work in the classroom, he's won 2 teaching awards during his time at UW, including the Chancellor's Inclusive Excellence Teaching Award. Dean Wilcots is dedicated to promoting outreach and the Wisconsin idea. He is currently co-chair of the statewide steering committee for the Wisconsin Science Festival and has led the university in the park outreach programs. His research focuses on the evolution of gas content of individual galaxies and galaxy groups through the lens of radio wavelengths. I'm going to certainly ask him to unpack that for me. Prior to moving to Madison, he was the Carl Jansky Postdoctoral Fellow at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory in Socorro, New Mexico, and he continues that line of research through leading the UW's involvement in the South African Large Telescope Project, the largest single aperture telescope in the Southern Hemisphere. He received his undergraduate degree in astrophysical sciences from Princeton University and his PhD in astronomy from the University of Washington. Dr. Wilcots. Eric, thank you so much for being here today.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Man, that is an impressive resume, and I hope I didn't embarrass you.
You did.
Too much.
You did.
But no, that is really, really exciting. I've got so many questions for you, but before I jump into that, I've got to do my black icebreakers because I always have these fun discussion starters. It's exam time, dude. It's exam
all right.
time.
I know I was going to get quizzed. But
No.
let's go for it.
And this is easier because you grew up in Philly. So
I grew up in Philly.
And so my first one is straightforward. Growing up as a kid, did you prefer grits or cream of wheat?
It was actually cream of wheat.
Wait, what?
I know.
Jeremy, let's pack up. This show is over.
Let me explain. There was something about grits that I was just slightly allergic to, and I don't know what it was. Yeah.
So you had a note from your parents
So
that
I
you
had a
couldn't
note
have
from my mom.
Okay.
'Cause we had grits a lot.
Okay.
Now I did like my grits with enough butter on them. Then it was all good.
Did you add sugar or salt? Were they savory or sweet? Or were they
Savory.
Really?
Yeah.
Jeremy, I'm not sure if this is going to work.
Oh, we'll make it work.
Well, this is the second time, only the second time a black individual has responded
To cream of wheat.
Yeah. No,
And I kicked them both out.
The previous response was because they had too much. They have grits for like 3 meals a day, so cream of wheat was like a treat.
Get it? Yeah.
But I get the allergy thing. Did anyone in your family eat it with sugar on it?
Oh, with sugar? Oh, no, we did not. No.
Really?
No. Butter. A lot of butter.
A lot of butter. Okay,
Yep,
I got you.
yep,
I
yep,
got you.
yep.
Now I'm older than you, so this might be a Midwest thing because my first few years until 6 was in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember black people having almost a shrine in their homes in the 60s
Mm-hmm.
of like these 3 individuals like on a mantelpiece. Did your family have any of that?
We did not have the shrine.
Do you
I know
know-
the shrine you're talking to.
do you know what I'm talking about?
My aunts who live in Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay, what was the shrine?
They. I mean, you had to have Jesus.
Yeah, come on now, come on, yes, Lord,
I mean,
come on
that
here.
Was the
That's right.
centerpiece
Okay.
of the shrine. That's what I remember the most. Sometimes it was my grandparents.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, I like that.
So family was
Sure,
always part
sure.
of that. Right. And those are the 2 essential pieces. Right.
I remember singing with RFK and MLK on them too.
No
where they would have
RFK.
Jesus and then they would have. I said RFK. I'm sorry, I mean JFK, President Kennedy.
Yeah.
And Martin Luther King Jr. But you had Jesus, but then you had your relatives.
It's a family camp.
Oh man, I like that. I like that.
Yeah. But in my house growing up in Philly, we did not have that. We did not have that shrine.
You did, and you know my stepfather's grandmother did. We didn't have it in my home, but I went to homes that had it. And they were kind of like dimly. They were sort of dimly lit in that area. Let me see. So you're from Philly. You're an astronomer, so you probably were a good kid. But on the occasion needed to be disciplined, did Mama Wilcots or Papa Wilcots, did they practice syllable spankings?
Syllable. We
I tell?
Oh well, yeah. There was a cadence to it.
And there was a kind of like that. There's a syllable spell. That's right.
To it. Yeah, the belt.
And how did the cadence go in your home?
It was.
So wait, your dad was military, right?
My dad was in the United States Marine Corps.
Oh my God. So who was the disciplinarian, your mom or your dad?
They could trade off.
Oh my God.
They could trade off.
And your mom could hang with the Marine, couldn't she?
Oh yes.
Didn't I?
So if I may, right, and I think in looking back at their lives, they both led remarkable lives, and so yes, my mom could. She hung with my dad all the time. Right? Remarkable people. Yeah.
I love that. When you go outside and play, did your family have sort of a superstition that you not split the pole? Was that a thing?
No.
Where if there's a stop sign or a street light, everyone had to go on the same side of it because they'd be like, "No, don't split the pole! Don't split the pole."
We did not. I know that.
You didn't have that?
We didn't do
Okay,
that. No.
I was
That may be a Midwest thing. I don't know.
Did you have play cousins growing up? Did you have people who lived nearby, and then when you grew up, you realized that's not even my blood cousin, but we call that person Aunt Mary or cousin Bob?
We did. When my early years in Philly. Yep. Yeah, they were our neighbors. Great. Not related at all. But
as a kid, you probably thought they were.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness! Let me see. This might be a given because you're working in Wisconsin, but growing up as an academic, have people ever complimented you by saying, "Wow, you're very articulate"?
Oh, yes.
Do you remember how old you were the first time you found out you were articulate?
I might have been in 9th or 8th grade.
Really? And so it was a
So
teacher, I would assume.
No, one of my classmates.
One of your
One of my
classmates?
classmates. He was trying to compliment me.
Which, of course.
He says, yeah, something to the effect. I think was it Brian Gumble at the time?
He told you.
He said, Eric, you're gonna be like Brian Gumble because people are gonna hear you and not know you're black. I'm like, okay, all right.
Thanks, I
Yeah, thanks.
Because as a kid, you don't.
I'm like,
you don't
what,
know.
What? Yeah,
It's
right.
only
what
when
do
you get
have?
older.
Right.
Man, so I'm curious. Did you grow up near your grandparents? Were your
I
grandparents
did not.
in the area?
No.
Okay,
no.
I was.
My dad's from Iowa, and so my on my dad's side, my grandparents were in Des Moines. My mom is from White Plains, New York, and just had a difficult childhood, so we rarely went up to see her mother. On occasion, we would, but we grew up in Philly with no relatives nearby, and so I did not have that experience that some of my cousins had. They grew up in Des Moines. Cousins were running around each other's houses, getting into trouble together, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't have that, right? So my family settled in Philadelphia in 1964, as far away from the rest of the family.
That's not Des Moines at all.
That is not Des Moines. That is not Des Moines.
Oh man, did you have to be home when the street lights came on in Philly? Did you have like sort of a? Because some of my friends say when the street lights came on, you had to be on the front.
Yeah,
stoop.
we had the benefit of growing up in a neighborhood that had big yards. And so if we were playing and running around, it was usually in our backyard or the neighbor's backyard or playing street hockey right out in front of the house or in the driveway or something like that. Oh. So we just had that benefit growing up, my brother and I. So didn't have that be home by the streetlight because you're out running around. It was just all that entertainment, that activity was just much closer.
Oh my goodness. Okay, now that is really great. So Dean, I'd love to get into talking about your experience and your background as an astronomer, but let me get some of the more pertinent issues just out of the way. You're the dean of the largest college at the
Yes.
University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Yes.
Approximately how many students are enrolled
About
in letters?
20,000.
Right. I'm sorry. What?
20,000.
Wow. Okay, and that's on a campus of what?
There's 52,000 students total. The undergraduate population is what, 38-ish thousand. So there's another 14,000 graduate students, professional students.
Sure.
Of the undergraduates, we have in LNS roughly about 60% of them are LNS students.
Wow.
Right. So it's a big college, and it spans a lot of disciplines.
Sure.
It makes my job a lot of fun.
Okay, I didn't know deans had fun.
Deans have fun because of at least for me, because of the both the intellectual stimulation, but also because of that awesome responsibility for delivering for those students. Right? My job is to make sure our students have the opportunities they need to be successful. Right? And so coordinating all that is actually.
Do you see liberal arts education, or particularly letters and science within a large university? Do you see that's becoming more popular? Because as people go into college, they're thinking, I want to be in comp sci, which can be its own department. I think at Madison, it's still part of letters and science. It's still letters, but business or maybe pharmacy or vet medicine. But what I enjoyed about being an LNS student is, well, one, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I liked having breadth and depth. I liked taking history and science and foreign language and feeling like in the old-fashioned way, I was experiencing an education, that it wasn't necessarily training me for a specific type of industry, but it gave me a well-rounded experience so that I could do a number of things. But I'm curious, are students, at least at Wisconsin, seeming to be more focused in what they want to do, and so letters and science, liberal arts is not as popular as it used to be, or is it more popular?
We still have increasing enrollments, and I think there's a couple things, and I agree with you entirely. There are those students who are looking for the experience you described, and we love them. They're great. Wisconsin, I think particularly with LNS, has the great advantage of amazing flexibility, so that student who is focused on, say, a major that might have a more direct connection to a career can at the same time pursue that, but also say, I'm interested in languages. I'm interested in history. I want to combine that. And so we have, the class we graduated last year had, I think just learned this number this morning, of about 1,200 unique combinations of majors and certificates
1,200?
in our graduating class of about 4,000 from LNS. So students
amazing.
are mixing and matching in ways that suit what they're looking for, right? that speak to their passion. And then it's our job to make sure they're getting all that they need. So, as you say, when they go out into the workplace, they're ready to tackle any number of jobs, right? And so that's where we're really trying to invest heavily in that. I don't want to say it's career preparation. It is career recognition, that what you're learning in college as a liberal arts student is preparing you to do lots of different things, right? And fundamentally preparing you to learn and to think critically.
Right.
Because the day where folks graduate college, land a job, retire from that job 35 years later, those days are long gone. So any student is going to be in 7, 8, 9 jobs across their career.
Right.
You got to be able to learn. You got to know how to learn.
And you got to be able to,
how to ask questions, how to think critically,
how to write.
how to communicate. Those are all at the core of the liberal arts education, right? And so we are providing that baseline, that preparation for students to be successful, no matter what they're pursuing.
Sure. Now you've made a career. The field of study is looking at the ethereal, looking at galaxies, studying them. You're currently in this granular reality. I mean, you're used to looking up at the universe that we all share, we're all a part of, but you're the Dean of Letters and Science where there's so many factions, and your work is about how do we find diversity and inclusion, like how do we pull us all together, how do we weather these storms of being so separate and so polarized. And so tell me about a few of the efforts that you spearheaded in the School of Letters and Science, College of Letters and Science, in terms of diversity and inclusion work that you're most proud of.
Oh wow! So we're doing a couple things. Well, let me start with perhaps the most granular because it's the closest to my experience in my career. When I got to college, I walked into the advisor's office. The professor was the advisor of astrophysical sciences. I'm an 18-year-old kid. I walk into her office and say, I want to do research in astronomy. Okay. I had no idea what I was talking about. Okay. No idea what that meant. I put words together. I did not know what that meant. And she said, sure, come on in. Right. And so I got to do research in astronomy as a freshman.
Okay, that's unusual.
Launched my career. I said, we have to be able to do something like that here. Right. Particularly for students who are coming from high schools and families and backgrounds and demographics that for whom that research path is new. Right. And so those are going to be our underrepresented students, our first-gen students. We've got kids who are coming, who are graduating from rural high schools of a class of 27.
Right.
We want to open the doors to what is a really important part of the university for those students early in their careers. So create what we call STEM scholars to get those students excited about doing research. And the capstone is that summer after their freshman year, they're in a paid summer research internship.
Are they really?
Doing everything from astronomy, computer science, psychology. We had a couple students last summer working with gerontology. Right? And so that, at a granular level, is part of what we're doing, because there is a sense of identity, a sense of community that we have to develop in our students. And part of that identity is identity as a scholar. And this is one way of doing that. Right, getting students in lab, and it's you go to their summer presentations, and it's emotional. You hear what these students are able to do, and so that's a small part. But the bigger thing is, how do we make sure that our students who are coming from underrepresented backgrounds, when they look around campus and say, "There's just not very many people who look like me on this place," and we recognize that, how do we make sure those students feel that sense of belonging and inclusion and welcome? I want that student to be able to. You should be able to go into any place. Put your feet up on the table. Now, your mother will tell you, don't put your feet up on the table.
She will.
Right, but you should feel that degree of comfort.
Sure.
Right, when I walk into a space, right, that, oh yeah, I can do that.
I can go into the refrigerator. I can open the refrigerator and look around.
That's what we need, right? And that's what we're trying to do. Center for Academic Excellence, you know that well, is a key part of that. Building both that community among students, but also giving that sense of belonging, that sense of identity, that sense of confidence to go navigate the rest of campus. Meanwhile, at the same time, under the leadership of Devon Wilson, he's my associate dean for inclusive excellence.
He's wonderful to work with, by the way.
Devon's awesome. Is going to our departments and saying, we need your help.
Yes.
At the local level, we need you to be participating in creating the kind of environments where everybody can thrive. Let us know what help you need. What is it that's really critical for you at this time? And so it gets away from this sort of, I don't want to say one size fits all, but sort of a big central initiative, we're going to do this. To go back to units and say, what is it you're wrestling with? Right? Is it recruiting faculty? Is it climate? Is it graduate students? What are the things right now that's most critical? Let's understand that and let's help you work through that, so that we can begin to create the kind of climate that we need to create in order for everybody to be thriving on campus. And so it's that focus on a particular set of students, but also be broad, right? And address climate and that sense of belonging at the local level in units and in departments, because that's where kind of the rubber meets the road. Right?
Exactly.
Yep. And that's going to be thinking about faculty, it's thinking about our graduate students, it's thinking about our undergraduate students, it's thinking about our staff. All of those things matter. And we have to be able to work on all of those things simultaneously.
Particularly on a large campus.
On a large campus like this.
Particularly
right,
when you
right,
have to, where students have to navigate.
Exactly.
In such a large space. So I used to be a recruiter for UW-Madison, and my advisor or my boss asked how early we should start recruiting, and I said kindergarten. He laughed, but I mean, we've got to find programs to sort of get kids thinking about this. As a kid, I now know what astronomy is. That's what I wanted to study. That was my hobby. That's what I love to do. And somewhere that light went out. So I'm curious, as you think about the undergrads in your program, and let's just look specifically. You're responsible for all students, but let's just think about Black students in particular. Where do you think that light goes out, or where do you think we lose it? Is because we're not directed towards math, or towards sciences? Because I never thought of astronomy as a science until I got to campus and saw where it was listed in the timetable. And I thought, oh, I'm not good in science. I can't take that. So where do you think we're losing students who could be potential astronomers? Is it third grade? Is it fifth grade? Is it high school?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't. It is somewhere in there. I don't know exactly where.
Sure.
But it's also a combination of factors, right? It is what is expected, right, of an individual student in third grade, in fourth grade, and fifth grade. What are the expectations? What are the perceptions that are imposed on that student by teachers and classmates and others about what they can and cannot be doing? Right. We've got to fight that. What is it that student, that fifth grader understands about the possibilities? Right. And I benefited growing up in a house that believed deeply in education and was full of books about everything. Right. So there was no lack of opportunity to spark my curiosity about something, because the resources were all around.
Sure.
Right. We had the library card. Go to the library.
Definitely, yes.
And nobody ever complained when we came home with too many books. Right?
Right.
So I went into a field of astronomy. There are not a lot of Black astronomers. So it's not that I could turn on the TV and go, oh, I can be like that.
Sure.
Right. But it was,
we didn't even have weathermen. When
yeah,
we were coming
right,
up.
exactly, right. So I had that benefit of growing up in education. But we need to be, as a society, we need to be better about showing people who we are,
Right.
and showing people what the possibilities are. Across a wide range of disciplines, not just astronomy. And so that's going to be really critical. It is expectations. It's what can I aspire to be, and understanding what doors are open. And that is, I think, probably more at the high school level, is making sure high school counselors understand the doors that are opening for students.
Sure.
And the work we're doing on campus, I have described as, instead of that analogy of going into a room with sort of 6 or 7 doors. So you're in this big room, and there's sort of 6, and they're all closed. Okay. Some kids come to campus because they're 3rd or 4th generation Badgers.
Right.
They know. Oh yeah, just turn the doorknob and go through the door.
Right.
Any one of those 6 doors, you can do that. Right. A kid who doesn't have that, they walk in that room, and go, man, all those doors are closed.
Right. And I'm trapped in here.
And what do I do? I don't know how to navigate that. I don't know that, oh yeah, I can just go through that door, right? So we have to be able to open all those doors. And that's what CAE is all about, opening those doors. I mean,
Yes.
and as we can do that in high school, to say, the doors are wide open for you. Right. Take advantage of that. That's going to be a key message
Sure.
that we've got to get across.
My mom started college when I was 6. Here, we moved to Chicago. You know my story to go to college here at the university in 1970 when I was 6. But she dropped out after about a few years and then finished with me in the mid 80s. But Mom was a good writer, good speller, great reader. And so I was strong in those areas. So I was always considered a smart kid because I could always read better. I could read quickly. I could comprehend to some extent. I was a good writer. I was a good storyteller, so I could digest information and give it back. That's how intelligence was measured, not necessarily in test taking and math. So by the time I got to college, and I thought, wait a minute, astronomy is a department? Like this is a thing. I remember this as a kid. I was sort of priced out of that neighborhood because I hadn't taken the science. I never thought of it as a science. It was a passion of my heart. I can still see the book in my head now that sort of showed the size of the Earth compared to the sun, how many light years it was away. I didn't understand that. I'm going to ask you about light years a little bit later.
Yeah.
I could see all of these. I love the rings of Saturn. I love the size and the colors of Jupiter, all of this stuff. But it's interesting. No one sort of connected that to anything. That a kid who's really passionate about this stuff, who I was the only kid, black, white, doesn't matter, who had a telescope outside of his window and knew what I was looking at. And so I think about the way kids are overlooked because we haven't figured out a way to understand their passion and sort of figure what's the itch that they're scratching. And no one encouraged me to do science. No, I don't remember anyone saying, I mean, I was good in foreign languages. I could write. I was great in the other class. I had a good memory, so I could do social studies. But no one in school ever pushed me to excel in the math and sciences, nor did my home because I was a good reader, good speller, et cetera. And so I think there are a lot of factors that keep us from having future astronomers in the pipeline because when there's that interest, no one put the infrastructure around me to understand, well, if you like that, these classes will help you to get ready
Right.
for that.
Right.
So when did you know you wanted to be an astronomer?
So that's I'm going to give a couple answers to that.
Okay.
So we got to talk about telescopes at some point. But like you, I got a telescope when I was 7 or 8 years old.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Christmas present. Got a telescope.
Wait a minute. Was it white?
It was white. J.C. Penney's.
Yes!
$50 telescope.
Yes, that's
I
the
still have
one.
mine in my basement. Okay.
That's the one.
So I got this telescope as a kid. And I would take it out to the backyard.
Yes.
Look up at whatever I could see. The moon, planets.
Right.
And when it got cold, I could keep it in my room, put the window down.
Yes,
Point the telescope out the window. So I did that as a kid. Right. And read all sorts of things about astronomy.
Sure.
Mid-70s, the Voyager missions go past Jupiter.
Yes.
Glued to the TV for a week, looking at these images coming back from Jupiter. And it's just cool.
Yes.
Right? I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Late 70s, we get the first Cosmos with Carl Sagan.
Yes.
I got the book for Christmas.
He was out of Cornell, right?
Out of Cornell, right. Read the book, watched the TV show. It's like that. I was just sort of fascinated by astronomy.
Yes.
And that.
But you also knew it was a thing?
So this is the challenge. I didn't really understand what it was, and so, but I knew enough to say, I can go. I picked colleges based on whether or not they did astronomy.
That's interesting.
Right. So I looked at my college. I said, I go into a place because I want to do astronomy.
Sure.
Right. Again, not really knowing deep inside what that meant. So I went to college to major at Princeton. It was astrophysical sciences. And that was my experience of going into the advisory at the beginning. Then I learned what it meant to be an astronomer
And a researcher.
right, and a researcher. And
Wow.
I was hooked. Okay? And so when did I know I wanted to? When I was early,
Sure.
at 8, I knew kind of what my passion was. Really wasn't until sort of I got to college that I knew what it actually meant to be an astronomer.
No, we have some similar roots in that area. You know, I remember, I'm 61, so I remember being in middle school in the early to mid 70s and having field trips to the planetarium. It seems to me like Memorial High School had a planetarium or a special room or something.
They have a planetarium. Yes.
That was just fascinating to go in. Now, again, as a kid, I was thinking they were going to open up, the roof so you could see stuff. But, it was daylight, so how are you going to do that? My daughter went through the school system here. They didn't have those kinds of tours. But that was like going to Great America for me. Being able to go and find out about these galaxies and solar systems and this whole other world was just amazing. But that doesn't seem to be a part of education.
That's too bad
anymore.
I haven't heard of
anyone.
Still a memorial. I think.
Is it? I don't hear anyone. I don't hear anyone talking.
Wow.
About that. Now on campus, there's that on Observatory Drive. There's that famous observatory.
Washburn Observatory.
Is that one of the oldest in the country?
It is.
What's the story?
It was built in the before I make mistakes. Just let folks know. There's a new book out about the history of astronomy at UW-Madison, written by Jim Lattice and Kelly Tyrell. So I recommend to get the real dates.
We're gonna put the link
Kelly,
for that.
They've got a new book out, but call it 1880 plus or minus. And it really was built in that era where for the university to call itself a research institution, it must have an observatory.
Really, that's the
criteria.
thinking.
That's the thinking.
Interesting.
Of the day. And so we had an observatory. It is still open the first and third Wednesday of every month during the academic year.
Do you know I've never ever gone in as a student with my mom? I've never gone in there.
First and third Wednesday of every month in the academic year, every Wednesday night in the summertime when it's clear,
Really?
you can go through and look through. It is one of the longest running public viewing occurrences in the country.
Wow.
We have been doing that outreach through Washburn Observatory for a very long time. I recommend it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Hey, good people. You're hearing this message from me because you're enjoying a Black Like Me podcast episode. And like so many people throughout the U.S. and around the world, you're perhaps enjoying and benefiting from these honest conversations between everyday extraordinary Black people and how they navigate our world. It actually takes a lot of work and creativity to produce an amazing podcast episode for your personal and professional enrichment and enjoyment. But you can help lighten the load by pausing for a moment and considering the benefit of this podcast to you, and then clicking on the Patreon link in the show notes to become a supporter of the podcast. Listeners make this show enjoyable, but it's supporters that make it possible. For as little as $2 a month, you can help make this award-winning podcast even better. So take a moment and think about what this podcast means to you, how you respect it and how you look forward to it and how it gives you great insights. Click that link and support at a level that's commensurate with your benefit. Contrary to popular belief, podcasts are far from free and their impact is far more than merely nominal. So I invite you to take a moment, join with me in making this podcast even more powerful, even more polished, and even more popular. We want to take these conversations around the world, and you can be a part of that. Click the links now. What is the most? Let's go back to the telescope. Mm-hmm. You still have that telescope?
I do. It's still in my basement. I still have.
My goodness!
I took it out. When did I take it out? That must have been in about 4 years ago, pre-COVID, right? There's something going on in the sky, and I'm bringing out this old rickety telescope,
yes,
right, that I still have, and my wife in her head is thinking, oh Lord,
she's good. Midlife crisis.
So my Christmas present was a new telescope, so I have a new, automatic telescope.
Get out of here! Really?
Yeah.
So you have the two telescopes.
I do have the two telescopes. The old one. It's what I grew up with, right? It's
mm-hmm.
And my dad said it was the best $50 he ever spent.
And that's a lot of money. I mean,
there's a lot of money.
Bikes probably didn't cost that much.
Right. No, but he would say that it was the best $50 he ever spent.
What was the coolest thing you saw through that white JCPenney telescope?
Oh, probably the moons of Jupiter. Looking at Jupiter and seeing the Galilean satellites, going, "Oh, that's cool."
Really?
Yeah. The funny thing is, the first thing I wanted to find were the rings of Saturn.
Of course.
All right. So there I am. I have these sky maps, these charts. I am in the backyard.
We should have known each other as kids.
I know that's Saturn. That has got to be Saturn. And I'm looking. I don't see rings. I said, but no, that's Scott. I'm looking. Turns out, we'll learn later in life, right, that because of the orbits of the Earth and Saturn, about once every 11 years or so, our viewing angle on Saturn means we're seeing the rings edge on.
Oh.
And there's no way with your little 2-inch telescope from JCPenney's, you're going to see the rings of Saturn. And that was the first winter I had my telescope. The rings are edge on. Yes, I was looking at Saturn, but I didn't know it because I didn't see the rings. And later, a few years later, like, oh, there's the rings. Right. But that telescope, the moons of Jupiter, really cool.
Oh my goodness.
Right. In part because of you just understand what that means for sort of the history of humanity, the history of astronomy, right? When Galileo first recorded those, that there were these dots around Jupiter that seemed to go around Jupiter. It's the first time somebody said, wait, you mean not everything goes around the Earth? There's something else out there that stuff goes around?
And what year would that have been?
Oh, now
I mean, roughly. Like, I know that name, but I'm blanking on my history.
1500, something like that? No, 1400s?
And like, so this was just with the naked eye?
No, yeah, I had a telescope. So when I tell my students,
there were
right,
telescopes or
yeah,
lenses?
Galileo did not invent the telescope.
Okay.
He probably wasn't even he was not the first person to use a telescope. He probably wasn't the first person to point the telescope at the sky because you had this funny thing that you would, oh, that's cool, right? You look at the sky. But he was the first person to use a telescope, point at the sky, and write down what he saw.
Oh, got you.
Right. So he did systematic studies and wrote down pictures of Jupiter, the moons of what we now call the Galilean satellites of Jupiter, the 4 big moons of Jupiter.
Got you because he wrote them.
He wrote
them down.
Wrote it down.
Wow. I mean, when you think about the intelligence and the ingenuity to use lenses in that way, to point them at the sky and to write down what you saw and to name these things, I mean, that's pretty astounding when you think about all that went around naming those, those things. Interesting. I just have a bunch of random stuff in my head.
All right, go for it.
Why is Pluto a planet?
No.
Okay, you have to know this hurts my heart because that's like telling me Snoopy is not Charlie Brown's dog.
I know.
What the hell happened to Pluto? Who stole Pluto?
Actually, we can lay blame to one of my college classmates.
One of your friends?
A guy named Mike Brown.
What's wrong with Mike?
I mean, Mike became a major in physics at Princeton same year, and went on to Caltech, and he has been doing planetary science at Caltech. And what Mike was doing was studying the outer part of the solar system and discovering, with others were doing it, the number of objects in the outer reaches of the solar system that were about the same size as Pluto, right? Really probably kind of looked like Pluto. And so what the astronomical community found itself in this place of saying there are these 9 planets that we grew up with.
Yes.
Do we say there are 18 planets and just keep on counting? Or do we say there's 8 planets and Pluto is one of this other set of things? And so that was the decision, that there are 8 planets and then there's a set of dwarf planets.
And Mike is behind that.
And Mike was part of it.
I'm going to write a letter to someone.
Okay.
I'm going to write a complaint.
Okay.
At least I know who to address it to.
Yeah, the thing about it is in the question, and part of it comes down to the physics of whether a planet is cleared out its orbit. Is there stuff sharing its orbit? And Pluto hasn't really cleared out its orbit, right?
Okay.
But it's a fascinating thing. It is one of the most interesting objects in the solar system.
But it's
not a planet.
But
It's a
it's
dwarf
not
planet.
a planet. Now, when you knew Mike and you guys were kicking it at Princeton,
Yeah.
was he like hitting around with, Eric, Pluto ain't no
Yeah,
planet?
he was a hardcore physicist. I was surprised to learn. Oh, Mike went into planetary science because he was physics guy.
So no, okay, so help me as a refresher.
Yep.
For folks, Earth is in like okay, so Earth's its own planet, but what are the outer rings? Are we part of a solar system?
We are
or
part of a solar
galaxy?
system.
So is that the Milky Way?
Well, no, we are in what we just call the solar system.
We're in the solar
So the
system.
Earth orbits around the sun,
Okay.
right? Along with our other.
And it takes 365 days roughly to do that.
Right, exactly.
I'm trying to get all this back together in my head.
That is the orbit of the Earth around the sun. 365
Earth
days.
moves around the sun.
A year. Right.
Sure.
Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. The other
Pluto.
planets.
We're gonna edit
A bunch of dwarf
that out.
planets.
Pluto.
A bunch of dwarf planets. So we're in the solar
So
system.
that's just the solar system.
Right. The sun
Yes.
around which we orbit
I'm
is
loving
one
this.
of hundreds of millions of stars in the Milky Way galaxy.
You said hundreds of millions
Yeah.
in the Milky Way galaxy. Okay, got you.
So we are in this
But it's the
galaxy
closest star
that we
to
call-
us.
No. Oh, yeah. The sun is the closest star to Earth. Absolutely. Yeah. It's the one we orbit.
Sure.
The nearest other star is 3.7 light years away. Right. So the stars you see in the night sky are all from an astronomer's perspective, all nearby. That's
of course.
that's our backyard.
That's our
Things you can
hood.
see in the
Right.
night.
Gotcha.
Now, if you go in the summertime in particular, if you go out and you're in a really dark location, you see the Milky Way. Right. You see that sort of band of light going across the sky.
I saw that thing once in Southern California, at Catalina. I think I saw it one summer or one fall.
That is the collective light of other stars in the Milky Way galaxy. So if you take a telescope and just point it at the Milky Way, all of a sudden that what looks like faint light, you start realizing, oh, that's just a lot of stars.
So okay, so it looks
that's
misty
just
and everything, but it's a
stars.
bunch of stars.
Right. Now, so that is the Milky Way galaxy that we're in. The galaxy is one of an untold number of other galaxies in the universe.
I forgot about that.
All right. So we reside in something we call the local group of galaxies.
Like, is that a new terminology? I don't remember that.
Local. So that's us and our nearest neighbor galaxies are all collectively in this loose neighborhood, which we call the local group.
Now, is the definition of a star that other bodies revolve around it? Because we revolve around the sun. So is that unique just for ours?
Oh
our star?
no. One of the lots of stuff buried in that.
Sure.
One of the great new areas of science, which really started in the mid-90s, is the discovery of planets around other stars. So
Yeah,
when
I
you
wondered
look up
about
at
that.
the night sky
Okay.
and all the stars out there, realizing that it is very, very common for stars, especially stars the same sort of size as the sun, to have planets around them. Right. So we have been discovering planetary system after planetary system after planetary system. There's thousands of them, right, that we know about, right, and have detected planets orbiting other stars, right, which has just opened up an entirely
course.
new sort of field of thinking about astronomy and planetary science. Now, a star itself is an object that is really undergoing nuclear fusion.
Okay.
It is being powered by fusion. That's what makes it a star. Right? And that is, you take the simplest way to explain it. It's why hydrogen is the simplest of atoms. If I combine 4 hydrogen atoms, I can squeeze them together. What I'm going to get is helium and a little bit of energy. And I do that on a scale, I'm going to get a lot of energy and a lot of helium. And that's what powers the sun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. What's a black hole?
A black hole is an object whose gravity is so high that light cannot escape. So there is an escape velocity from the Earth's gravity. If you want to launch a rocket, you have to overcome the Earth's escape velocity.
Okay.
To overcome the gravitational pull of the Earth. So I would do
Sure.
this thing. I used to go to the science festival in South Africa, and I'd ask the kids who can throw the ball the farthest, right? And say, can you come on, can you get it? No, nobody can get the ball out of the Earth's gravity.
Right.
You need a lot of energy to do that. You need a rocket to do
Sure.
that. So everything has an escape velocity. So the escape velocity of a black hole is larger than the speed of light. So light does not escape from it.
Oh, so there's light in it. It just doesn't.
Well, there's
escape.
energy in it. And the energy can't
Or
get
does
out.
it suck out all the light so that
Yeah,
light
right,
doesn't
right.
exist?
Right. Yep.
Oh my goodness. That is. What's the spookiest or the eeriest thing you've seen in the sky?
Eeriest thing. I don't know if anything's been eerie, but I'm going to answer that with just letting people know and appreciate, because not everybody has had the benefit of being in the Southern Hemisphere and seeing the night sky from the Southern Hemisphere.
And the Southern Cross.
And the Southern Cross. Southern Cross is fine. We wrote songs about it.
Yes.
It's fine. But if you look at the Milky Way in the southern hemisphere, what you'll realize is that there are these places in the Milky Way where there's an absence of light. There are these dark patches in the Milky Way. And so any indigenous population in the southern hemisphere, if you look at their stories about the sky, they focus on those.
Interesting.
On those dark patches in the Milky Way, because that's what stands out. It's not all the constellations. Yeah, there's stories about constellations, but the story, if you look at the Aboriginal folks in Australia, the indigenous populations in Southern Africa, they're telling stories about these places in the absence of light in the Milky Way. So it's not eerie or spooky, but it just turns your mind to think about it in a different way.
Did we really go to the moon?
Yes.
Okay, just see, but you were
Yeah,
so emphatic on
we're
that.
going to take care of that one, yeah.
Are UFOs for real?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, as an astronomer, are you sworn or secret? Like, do you have to say that? Like, of course, there's a Santa Claus.
There's no oath I had to take.
There's no oath. you have to-
No.
So there's no
So
section 57. What's it called?
Yeah. So this is a really fascinating question.
Sure.
And one of the
Certainly is for
courses,
me.
one of the courses I taught for many years is called Life in the Universe.
Oh, come on, talk to me.
Oh yeah, it was a great class. Coach taught it with some folks in the geology department, and so we were talking about what is life?
Okay.
Right? How did life come to be on the Earth? Right? What does that look like? And the possibilities of life elsewhere.
Yes.
Okay. So, did you ever see the movie Contact?
I did. Who's in that?
Jodie Foster.
I was just thinking
Michael
that.
McConaughey. Yep.
Yes.
Fun.
Q2. Is that little girl kept calling? No, that's another one.
I think
Yeah, when she was a little girl, she was trying
you're
to
thinking
call her
Interstellar. You're thinking Interstellar.
I'm thinking of Stellar.
Interstellar. Yeah.
Contact,
This is
I remember that.
Contact.
Yes,
Contact.
yes.
It's based on a book written by Carl Sagan.
Yes.
Funny story is it was filmed, the second half of the movie was filmed at the Very Large Array Radio Telescope where I worked. It was filmed the year after I left. I could have been an extra. I'm not bitter about that anymore. I've gotten over that. I could have been somebody.
You could have been a contender.
Could have been a contender, right. But there at the beginning of Contact,
Yes.
there is a scene of the 1932 Olympics or 36 the Berlin Olympics, which are really sort of the first worldwide radio broadcast. 1930s,
Yes.
less than 100 years ago. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. And the movie begins with backing up from the Earth with that radio signal
Yes.
going
yes.
out. It is today. It's 2024? It's only gone, 96 light years? Which means only if there is some civilization within 96 light years of the Earth would they have any idea that we're here. There's nothing that's happened on this planet for the 4.5 billion years this planet has been around. Until that moment that we became in any way visible as a civilization
Really?
to anything out in space.
Now, has anything out of space given us that symbol?
No. There have been a couple of times where they thought there was something, but that gives you, just keep that scale in mind. It's hard, right? And then you really get into questions of how long does it actually take civilized life to arrive, right? It took 4.5 billion years for this planet to get to the point where the technology was there to be able to broadcast something,
Wow.
right? So you begin to think, boy, the scale's big, right? So no, we haven't been visited. We haven't had UFOs.
So there's not life on any other planet.
No, that's not saying the same thing.
So there is life.
Yeah, you see, now this is the fun part.
Come on, let's have some fun.
Let's have some fun. I said 4.5 billion years until we had the technology. Life has been on this planet for probably 4 billion years. That's a debate about when it started.
Sure.
Right. There could be a lot of life elsewhere.
Sure.
So I will say, this is total,
Human life? Or are
this
you
is
talking
total-
about
well, see, now
like
you want to get
floral life? You're talking about aqua life? What do you, Dean? Come on, talk to me, Dean.
All right.
Do I have a dangle-gopper? What are they called?
Doppelganger out
Do I
there somewhere?
have one out there?
Another Alex G.
Another Alex G out
there. Can the galaxy handle that?
Oh,
no, that's gonna be a
Hey, that's a great title for this episode. So you're saying you're not saying it's not human life, but there could be life form.
There could be life. So we actually just started up a new center at the university called the Wisconsin Center for Origins Research, which is trying to ask this question of how did life get started here and the possibilities of life elsewhere. So it combines sort of biology, it combines geology, it combines astronomy to really understand scientifically what life looks like. How do we know? What are the ingredients you need? We don't really know how life started on the Earth. There's some ideas, but we don't really know, especially how complex life got started. So these are really, really interesting questions.
Man, this is so exciting and so interesting to me. So how did you feel when the discussions of a Hubble telescope came up? Like we're gonna actually see like footage from Mars. I remember reading that, just thinking, am I saying that? Is it the Hubble?
Hubble, James Webb. There's
the big telescope that went to Mars. Am I getting that name right?
Oh. So you're thinking of the rovers that are on Mars?
Yes.
Yeah. So you and I grew up in the era of Viking.
Yes.
Right. So the first things that landed on Mars were the Viking missions. Right. They landed 76, 77.
Did it send images back?
They sent some pictures back, right, from the surface of Mars. Really cool.
Yes.
Wow, we're on another world. Right. And they landed on Mars, and it looks barren. But there's now rovers there that are doing a bit of geology, right? You're looking at the rocks. You're trying to understand what's the chemistry of the rocks. There's lots of evidence that there was water on Mars. Mars was once wet. Right. That water is probably evaporated. It's underground.
Sure.
Goes away. But there was water on Mars, without a doubt. Was there life on Mars? We don't know.
And so, am I just blanking on the name of that telescope? I don't know why I'm thinking
So
Hubble.
you may be conflating the Hubble Space Telescope.
That's it.
Okay, so Hubble Space Telescope was launched mid 80s, late 80s.
So that just allowed us to see Mars.
Right.
That didn't travel.
That allows us what Hubble did was really become the first really big optical telescope.
That's
to
what
get
I'm
above
thinking.
The Earth's
That's what I'm
atmosphere.
thinking of.
The atmosphere distorts everything. So that is above the atmosphere. So your ability to see is much better.
Gotcha.
The James Webb Space Telescope, which was launched a couple of years ago, is a bigger, better Hubble. And the images that it is sending back and the data it's sending back is...
So with the Viking telescopes, they actually went to Mars.
Those are rovers. Those are machines on there. Yeah.
How long did it take, roughly?
It's the travel time to Mars is, when you do it right, it's...
You make it sound like we're going to Cleveland.
It's like 8, 9 months, something like that.
Really?
Yeah. You got to do it right.
If they ever opened up free space rides to Mars with the right kind of equipment for deans of letters and sciences across the country, would you go out of space if given the opportunity?
Not yet.
Got you.
Right, because space travel is hard.
Is it really?
It's hard. Yeah, I mean, we've got over the last year and a half or so, a number of things have been launched, haven't worked. Now, when humans are on it, you're much more careful about it.
Sure.
There's still too much I want to do here on planet Earth to think about spending time in space.
Wow. Is Elon Musk gonna get us there? Are we gonna have like, I don't know, like vacation camping spots on the moon? Are we ever gonna
How much you make? For the right price, there's going to be possibilities for folks. Ultimately.
Really?
Ultimately.
In our lifetime?
I mean, you can go into orbit now.
How far?
Just get above the Earth's atmosphere. I don't know. Can you get above the Earth's atmosphere?
Would you do that?
No.
Why not?
I'm not that adventurous.
Like, so that does not interest you at all, and it's not the danger of it. You just don't care.
It's a little. I would love to see the sky from above the Earth's atmosphere, just to see in its sheer glory.
Yes.
What the sky looks like. But I'm not fired up to hop on a rocket. I mean, a rocket is a bomb that goes off in the right direction.
See, you're messing up my fun now. So, Eric, is the blue sky really black?
Yes.
You said yes?
Yeah. I mean, it's blue because the atmosphere, the Earth's atmosphere is scattering the light. So
Gotcha. So, okay, as I come back to Earth, pun certainly intended. What do folks with master's degrees and PhDs in astronomy do if they don't work for NASA And or do they work for NASA? Like, what is? Do they work for meteorological?
Let me
firms?
give you a couple of anecdotes. I had a colleague when I was at the VLA, who was leaving the VLA.
VLA?
Very large array, National Radio Astronomy Observatory in New Mexico. He was leaving to take a job at then what was Kodak in Connecticut, because the job there was basically to do image processing, which is what he was doing as a radio astronomer.
Gotcha.
He was doing image processing. One of my favorite students, he is now doing data science in a company in Chicago. Because as an astronomer, what are you doing? You are analyzing an enormous amount of information that is sometimes incomplete and not perfect. You're extracting information from that data and trying to reach conclusions based on that information, based on a set of principles behind that you're going to make those conclusions.
Sure.
Right. And then you're trying to tell the world about that.
Okay.
That skill set is valuable in any number of different disciplines.
Oh,
Right?
sure.
We are a data-rich world. And so data science has become sort of a key word for those types of careers. But whether you're in insurance, whether you're doing agriculture, whether you're working in business, whether you're working on Wall Street, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of data, the ability to understand data, to understand how to process data. In some cases, it is imaging that data, making images out of it. Right? But also understanding that data is never perfect.
Sure.
And what does that mean? And how do you account for the things that you don't know right, in your data? And also then how do you reasonably apply principles to that, interpreting that data? Whatever those principles are. For an astronomer, it's the laws of physics, right? In economics, it's a different set of rules that you want to apply to the data that you're looking at. But it's still that basic notion of taking data, applying some principles to it, reaching some conclusions based on that.
Sure. Who, if any, were the black astronomers in the field as you were coming of age? You know, like in your PhD programs, like.
I mean, I was, I think, the second black student in the PhD program at Washington.
Wow. Okay. Oh, because that's telling you something.
Right. I met a fellow astronomer. Well, when I was here, assistant professor, we were at a meeting, and I was talking to her, and we did the usual thing you get together. It's like, where'd you go to grad school,
Right,
et cetera,
sure.
et cetera. And so it turns out that when I went to grad school, I applied to grad school. I could have gone to Berkeley, Santa Cruz, or the University of Washington. Those are my three choices.
Sure.
So I went to Washington. And I was telling her this, and she looked at me in all seriousness and said, "It's your fault." I'm like, I've never met this.
You're like, what's my fault?
I'm like, whoa.
Right.
Turns out that she was the first black grad student at Santa Cruz. Had I gone, I would have been the first black grad student at Santa Cruz. So whatever she had to put up with, I would have sort of paved the way a little
Sure.
bit. Right. So there weren't a lot.
So you're a trailblazer.
So you look at it. You look at any data on, the NSF puts out data on PhDs in science, right? And they break it down by race. Oh, there's Eric.
Like they can just tell you-
1992. Oh yeah, there's Eric.
there's Eric right
right.
there.
There's no, my name's not on that data point, but
your blood is.
right. It's me. So that was the field as I was growing up, right? And I tell people I could go to meetings, particularly within my sort of the subdiscipline, and everybody remember who I was.
and for my listeners, why did they know who you
right,
were?
right,
Why did
right,
they know,
right.
Why did they remember you of all those people,
of all the 100 people in this room?
Eric? Okay, you're Eric from Washington,
Yeah,
right?
Right.
I get
so,
it.
So yeah, it was not. Now, I will say the discipline is going to be much more diverse.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
The discipline has made great strides over the past decade and a half.
And would you say the majority of folks are researching and working at universities? I know you mentioned
In astronomy, most astronomers are either at a university or in one of the national, be it NASA or associated. For example, James Webb Space Telescope, the Space Telescope Science Institute, which is on the campus at Hopkins in Baltimore, employs a lot of astronomers. Right. So there are a lot of astronomers who are in the business of doing astronomy, either at a university or at a federally funded research organization, be it NASA, be it an NSF observatory, be it the Space Telescope Science Institute.
Hey, have you ever crossed? This is just a strange question. Have you ever crossed paths with Neil deGrasse Tyson?
I sure have. I've had dinner with him.
Really?
I've had drinks with him.
Is he nice?
He's a nice guy.
He seems like
he
it.
will take the oxygen out of the room, though.
Oh,
'Cause
of course.
He's got stories to tell. Yeah.
Oh my god! Now he's still living.
He's
right?
still he's at in New York at the American Museum of Natural History.
How old would he be roughly?
Neil is actually about our age, maybe even a couple years younger.
Okay, so he wasn't a student of Carl Sagan's or anything.
No.
Okay.
He inherited that mantle that because he became a very public face for astronomy in the way that Carl Sagan had done in the 70s.
Right.
Right. And Neil picked that up and turned that into his identity, his career. You know, the number I've lost track of the number of books he's written.
But he's
but
right
he
place
remade
at the right
Cosmos, right?
Yes.
In his way. So he has become that public face of astronomy, right? In ways that other disciplines don't have.
Right.
Right. And I've always wondered about that.
It's like being in the right place at the right time and marketing it correctly.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a kid, there was a guy. This must have been in the mid '70s. I wish I could remember his name because I was going to ask you if you ever watched him. It was like he would walk out, like there'd be all stars behind him. It's like he would walk out on a ledge or a path and say, "Well, tonight in your southern sky, you're going to see." He was a guy with looking back, I almost feel like he was associated with Carl Sagan, but he would come on every night. This is back when television would go off at midnight. And it would sort of be this thing where he would come out and tell you what to look for in the sky. So I was just wondering if he was a popular astronomer, but I can tell by the blank look. Maybe just it was a local thing. But because he spoke to that love for astronomy, although I was in high school by this time, he kind of reminded me of that love because he would come out and basically interpret your sky and say, if you go out at about 10 o'clock tonight, if you're in the Midwest, this is where you want to look and what you want to do. What's the next big thing that's going to happen in the sky that you're excited about? Like people used to talk about the Bailey's Comet. Is that like every 200 years?
Halley's Comet.
I hate
every
it. Calling it Bailey's Comet. I'm sorry, Halley's Comet.
It was every 76, so it's going to be a while yet.
Gotcha.
It's going to be a while yet for it. And the next time Halley comes by, it's not going to be all that spectacular.
Really?
Just because where we're going to be, where it is in its orbit. I mean, there's a comment recently. The next big thing that's going to be is something we probably don't know about yet.
Okay.
And the way I say that is we still to this day can be somewhat surprised by a comet. Now, by the surprise is now sort of a year out. But if you think back to sort of the mid '90s, there were two comets that came by, Hale-Bopp and Hyakutake, and astronomers knew they were coming close. Nobody actually predicted just how spectacular they were in terms of just the tail stretching across the sky. And so we're still open to those kinds of surprises.
Got you.
Yeah.
Have planets in our solar system gotten any closer to each other than they were,
No.
say, so the exact same distance?
Exact same distance.
And they're on this little groove.
They're
and they're
they're orbiting around, doing their thing, taking their sweet time.
And are we going to lose any more planets? Like you guys took Pluto away.
No. The rest of them are safe. Don't worry.
The rest are safe. Okay. Hey, and then just as we're winding down, I really appreciate, you have no idea how much fun I'm having just reliving some of my childhood passion and asking some of these questions that I find to be intriguing. Could you just demystify light years for me? And no, let's answer it this way. Someone told me that stars that I'm looking at may have burned out ages ago, eons ago, whatever the measurement of time is, and what we're seeing is that signal still coming to Earth, but the actual star is no longer flashing. You know, the lights are out, no one's home. Is that true?
Yes. Now, whether or not the stars are gone is it? So light travels at a certain velocity, 300,000 kilometers per second.
How many miles is that?
186,000 miles per second.
That's
I
fast.
think it's fast.
Okay.
It's fast.
And so when you said that,
Funny
that means
story
like,
how fast it is. You know the
Yes.
was it Josh Gibson Bell, old Negro League baseball player? They said he was so fast.
Oh, yeah.
he could turn out
Off
the
the
lights
lights.
and get in bed before the room got dark.
Yes.
Okay. Light travels at a certain velocity, right? So which means it takes time to go from point A to point B.
Okay.
Right. So the stars, the things you're seeing in the night sky, are so far away
Okay.
that you're seeing the light that left that star 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 100, 200, 1,000 years ago.
Wow.
Right. The sun, light takes 7 or so minutes to get from the sun to the earth. Right.
That's lickety split.
That's lickety split. But I do this with kids all the time. I'm going to send you to Saturn because I know you want to go to Saturn.
And
You,
you know
you
I
want
wanna
to go
go
into
to-
space.
I
You
do.
want to go to Saturn, right? So I'm going to send you to Saturn, right? Saturn's a long ways from here.
So I better pack.
So you're going to
Well,
pack. So when you get there, you better phone home.
Okay.
So you're going to phone home and say, hey, I made it to Saturn.
What?
We're going to wait a long time. It's a good Saturn, probably a good couple hours away. A couple hours later, we're going to hear, hey, I made it to Saturn. We're going to say, great, how's the weather? A couple hours later, you're going to hear, great, how's the weather? Because that's how long it takes light to travel back and forth just to get to Saturn. So when you're looking at the night sky, you're looking at stars, you're looking at light that left those stars a long time ago. So astronomers get to do time travel, right? We are looking at the universe as it looked
Oh.
a long time ago. And so a thing like James Webb Space Telescope that is looking at very distant galaxies, and the light year is the distance it takes light to travel in
Gotcha.
a year. So you are looking at objects that are 13 billion light years away, which means you are seeing those objects as they looked 13 billion years ago. And so we're able to begin to uncover and understand the evolution of the universe, because as you look farther out, you're effectively looking farther back in time about what the universe looked like.
That's really cool.
Right. And that's really cool. And so putting that piece together of saying, boy, I'm looking at what galaxies seem to be like 13 billion years ago or 10 billion years ago, right, by looking far out. And then you can also combine that by saying, all right, let me now look at the Milky Way. Let me find stars that are 10 billion years old. And can I match what our galaxy is like with what I'm seeing out very far away, and be able to tell a story about how galaxies form and about how galaxies evolve, right? Can I pull those two things together? All right, so that is I think when I really began to understand that is when I said, but boy, I'm in the right job, right? Because you're asking questions about that, you're understanding things about the universe kind of as it was.
Wow. Some of those concepts are so foreign. And it just takes you a minute to just sort of try to translate light years and how far away something really is.
The universe is big.
Yes.
It's
And my mind's still trying to process what you said about going to Saturn. I'm still trying to think about
Saturn's a long ways away.
the amount of. And listen, I'm gonna have to just ask you to just say that part once more, because I was thinking you were gonna say something else that sort of kind of messed my head up. So you said,
So let me put it this way,
Yes.
maybe more tangible way. Think about Mars is closer.
okay,
Mars, the light travel time to Mars is, I think, sort of 4 minutes
from the
Earth to Mars.
Oh, from the Earth to Mars.
Okay, right. And I'm going to put this in the context of how hard it is to land something like a Viking rover on Mars, because we've all been on airplanes.
Yes.
Many of us have been on an airplane. Airplane has a pilot, so when you're landing, right, pilot's controlling that landing.
Right.
You can see Mars, and how long does it? Once the pilot says, "Hey, flight attendants, take your seats, prepare for landing,"
Right.
you're on the ground 5 minutes later.
Sure.
Right.
Right.
When we're sending something to Mars, to land on Mars, there is a moment that says, "Okay, we send the signal, begin landing."
Right.
Okay. 4 minutes later, that spacecraft that has been built here gets that signal to begin landing. It starts that process. There's no control, right? There's nothing that we can do to say, "Oh, watch out for that rock,"
Right. Right.
because the communication time is 4 minutes, right?
Got you.
You
Got
can't. You can't. So it's a much different concept. And so when you're going out to Jupiter or Saturn, the communication time's even longer, right? And so that's when we're sending a spacecraft out there. That communication, that lag, it's much.
I got
much
you. I
longer,
got
right?
you.
And that's just staying in the solar system. When you look at those stars out there, it's much farther away. The nearest stars is about 3.7 light years away. It's like that light 3.
Man. That is really amazing. Listen, I don't want to hold you up. I could talk for hours and hours. We're gonna have to get together again and have a beer.
Happy to come
come
back.
back and talk, because I find this just so just so fun to think about, but it also connects with an old passion that I now wish I had kept up with. So I have to find out like where amateur astronomers hang out, or where they go to have meals. Or
We got Space Place just down the street. Oh, in South Madison.
It used to be that's the place that used to be the
where Ponderosa turned into Space Place.
That's right.
And then Space Place moved into the South Madison complex.
And I never knew what that was. So, got you. Okay, so we have to talk about that because I have no idea what they do in there.
They have fun, but I'm going to invite you. I'm going to invite your listeners. Come to Washburn Observatory.
I'm going to do that,
look through
Eric.
telescope.
I'm going to do that. I
Look through
would love. Can you bring popcorn in there? Are you allowed
You
to
can bring
eat?
popcorn in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Hey, listen, folks. My special guest has been Dean Eric Wilcots, the dean from the College of Letters and Science at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, but he's also an astronomer. And we've had a really fun conversation just about his insights into the universe, helping me to demystify light years and whether or not there's life out there besides our own. But it was just a fun conversation because folks in my community are doing extraordinary things all over the planet. And so I really appreciate your time, Eric, in coming in and letting me know what you're doing on campus, what you've been doing in your research, what your passions are. This has really, really been a treat. We're going to put some cool links in the notes also, particularly about the book on the history of the observatory telescope or the observatory here at Wisconsin. Listen, folks, we want to continue our conversation. So click the link in our notes also to figure out how to do that. We have some wonderful questions so that you can interact with each other because we're having these great conversations and we don't want it to end just because the episode does. So please take a moment, do that, meet some new like-minded friends, and figure out how we keep these discussions percolating in our hearts so we continue to be a part of great change that we want to see. All right? I've got a great team of people who helped me to bring this wonderful podcast to you. So I want to give a special shout out to Eli Steenlich, who is responsible for social media, editing, and production. Jeremy Holliday, who's in the studio with me today, who's responsible for research, editing, and production. Don Thornton, who handles guest invites and production. Ariana Proctor, who's responsible for creating and moderating the listener space. I want you to get a chance to know her better. And Jakesha Hunt, who's responsible for my Black Like Me merchandise. Listen, folks, we have this space and these opportunities to learn new things, to be inspired by my guests, and to think about how we can engage our world differently and make it the kind of place we all want it to be. So take a moment, get involved, and continue to make this world better and to lean in closer to other folks. All right? It's been such a wonderful treat to be here with you. I'm proud to be your podcast host, and I'm looking forward to being with you again soon here on Black Like Me Podcast with Dr. Alex G. Have a great day.
Black like me. Black like me.
I want to thank you for taking time to listen to this episode of Black Like Me Podcast with Dr. Alex G. If you like that opening track of our theme song, you can show your appreciation to Corey Saffold, who created that and produced it, and Marcus Fleming, my cousin, who's on vocals. I also want to say that this podcast was started with the generous support of the Human Family Unity Foundation, and so we always want to stop and thank them for that. For the many patrons who support us through our Patreon page, thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't just listen, but you support, you lean in, and you help this podcast to be what it is. And then I need to thank you, the listeners, who make a point of downloading this, listening to it, and sharing it. Without all of you, this podcast would not be what it is and what it's becoming. Thank you so much.